Unveiled secrets of mini strokes in the elderly. A doctor's urgent wake-up call. What if the one person you do anything to protect, your elderly parent or grandparent, suddenly slipped toward danger and you didn't even know it? Imagine this. You're sharing a warm moment, chuckling over a cherished memory, when out of nowhere, their face sags, their words turn to mush, and their hand shakes like a leaf. It's gone in minutes, fading like a bad dream, and you think, they're just worn out. But hold on, that's a lie we tell ourselves too often. As a veteran doctor with decades in the trenches, I've witnessed this scene play out again and again. And it's not a fluke, it's a silent, desperate cry from the body. That brief glitch? It's a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke, and it's no innocent blip, it's a countdown to disaster. Every year, 240,000 Americans face these hidden threats, and for the elderly, it's a glaring warning that a crippling stroke could strike within days. Today, I'm tearing down the veil on 8 unmissable signs of this ticking time bomb, because spotting them could be the difference between life and loss. Stay with me. This isn't dry science, it's your lifeline to keeping them safe. Now, let's dive into the 8 signs of a mini stroke in the elderly. These aren't abstract textbook terms, they're real, urgent clues I've seen save lives in my decades on the front lines. 1. Sudden weakness or numbness. Imagine waking up one morning, reaching for your coffee cup, and realizing your arm just won't cooperate. It's limp, heavy, like it's gone to sleep on its own. Or perhaps you glance in the mirror and notice one side of your face sagging, your smile lopsided in a way it's never been before. It's a heart-stopping moment, yet within minutes, maybe an hour, it's gone, like a ghost that vanishes at dawn. This is sudden weakness or numbness, one of the most unmistakable signs of a transient ischemic attack, TIA. In my 30 years in the ER, I've seen this countless times. Patients would shuffle in, sheepish, saying, "Doc, I must have slept on it funny," or "It's just a pinched nerve." But when we ran an MRI, the truth emerged. A temporary blockage had starved a section of their brain of oxygen. Here's what's happening. When a blood vessel narrows or a tiny clot lodges briefly, the brain region controlling that arm, leg, or face goes offline. No oxygen, no function. The good news? Blood flow resumes and the symptoms fade. The bad news? It's a siren blaring that a bigger stroke might be lurking. I remember a 76-year-old farmer, tough as nails, who ignored his numb leg for days until it happened again, and he couldn't stand. By the time he reached me, it was a full stroke. Don't wait for a second act. If one side of your body suddenly weakens or goes numb, even briefly, it's not a fluke. It's a cry for help. Call a doctor or head to the ER. Timing here isn't just critical, it's everything. 2. Temporary vision changes. Have you ever had a strange moment where a shadow creeps across your vision, like a dark curtain dropping over one eye, then lifting as if nothing happened? Or maybe everything blurs, doubles, or blinks out entirely for a few seconds. That's not your imagination playing tricks. It's a TIA hallmark called amaurosis fugax, and it's a red flag you can't ignore. I once treated a 72-year-old retired teacher who described it vividly. "It was like a blackout in one eye, doc, like someone flipped a switch off, then back on." She'd been marking papers, thought it was fatigue, and nearly dismissed it. Lucky for her, she mentioned it during a routine visit. We adjusted her blood pressure meds and added a low-dose aspirin. 6 years later, she's still stroke-free. Vision changes like these stem from a hiccup in blood flow to the retina or the brain's visual centers. A clot or narrowing cuts the oxygen supply, and your sight glitches, sometimes just in one eye, sometimes both. What sets this apart from, say, eye strain or a migraine? It's sudden, unprovoked, and often fleeting, seconds to minutes. Migraines might come with flashy lights or zigzags, but TIA vision loss is stark, like a power outage. I've seen too many elderly patients shrug it off as old eyes. Don't. It's not a quirk, it's a warning. If your vision pulls a disappearing act, get it checked fast. It could be the difference between a scare and a stroke. 3. Difficulty speaking or slurred speech. Picture this. You're chatting with a loved one, and mid-sentence, their words turn to mush, slurring like they've had one too many drinks or stuck on the tip of their tongue, refusing to come out right. It's jarring, and if it's a TIA, it's gone in minutes. This is aphasia, trouble speaking or understanding language, and it's a neon sign of a mini stroke. I recall an 82-year-old gentleman, a witty storyteller, who one day chuckled, "Guess old age finally caught my tongue." His wife wasn't laughing. She'd noticed his speech garble during dinner. A CT scan revealed a clot risk tied to atrial fibrillation. Speech isn't just how we connect, it's a window into brain health. When blood flow to the language centers, like Broca's or Wernicke's areas, drops even briefly, words tangle or vanish. You might hear, "I can't say it," or see them struggle to follow your reply. In my career, I've seen this dismissed as stress or a senior moment. But here's the kicker. Unlike fatigue, TIA-related speech issues hit like a lightning bolt. Sudden, clear, and often one-sided in impact. If it resolves, don't sigh in relief. Act. I've lost patients who waited, only to wake up mute from a stroke. If speech stumbles out of nowhere, call for help. It's not a drill, it's a deadline. 4. Sudden confusion. 1 minute, they're sharp as a tack, recalling birthdays or debating politics. Then suddenly, they're lost in a fog. They might forget where they are, fumble simple tasks like buttoning a shirt, or stare blankly when you ask a question. It's not the gradual drift of dementia. It's abrupt, fleeting, and tied to a TIA's blood flow hiccup. I've seen families mistake this for exhaustion or early Alzheimer's. A 70-year-old patient once wandered into my clinic, disoriented, saying, "I don't know how I got here." His daughter thought he was just tired until it happened again, and tests showed a TIA. The brain's thinking hubs, the frontal lobes or temporal regions, rely on a steady blood supply. When that falters, even for minutes, confusion reigns. It might last an hour, then clear up, leaving everyone puzzled. Here's my take. Aging brings memory quirks, but sudden confusion is a different beast. It's not a slow fade, it's a switch flipping off, then on. I've had patients brush it off as a bad day, but I've also seen those bad days turn into permanent damage when ignored. If your loved one's mind clouds up out of the blue, don't second guess, get help. Time's ticking, and the brain doesn't wait. 5. Dizziness or loss of balance. A sudden spin, a wobble, a stumble. It hits like the room's tilting, and you're unsteady on your feet. It's easy to blame vertigo, dehydration, or just getting old. But when it's a TIA, it's the brain's coordination center gasping for blood. I've had patients fall, laughing it off as clumsiness, only to learn later it was a mini stroke. Take a 75-year-old woman I treated. She tripped in her kitchen, blamed her slippers, but her husband noticed her speech slur too. Tests confirmed a TIA affecting her cerebellum, the balance hub. When blood flow dips there, you don't just feel dizzy, you lose control. Unlike an inner ear issue, which builds gradually, TIA dizziness strikes fast and often pairs with numbness or vision shifts. In my ER days, I'd ask patients, "Did it come out of nowhere? Any other odd sensations?" If yes, it's a neon sign for help. Falls in the elderly are risky enough. Add a TIA, and it's a double threat. I've seen fractures from these episodes, but worse, I've seen strokes follow when ignored. If balance betrays you suddenly, don't chalk it up to chance. Check it out. It's your brain begging for attention. 6. Severe headaches. Not every headache is a crisis. Tension aches and migraines are old friends to many, but a sharp, sudden headache, especially with numbness or dizziness, can signal a TIA's vascular stress. It's not the most common sign, but in my career, when it hits, it's distinct, like a thunderclap in your skull. I treated a 69-year-old man who described it as a knife in my head, alongside blurry vision. We found a TIA tied to high blood pressure straining his brain's arteries. During a mini stroke, a vessel might spasm or a clot briefly disrupt flow, irritating the vascular lining. It's not the pounding of a migraine. It's quick, intense, and often odd. Here's the catch. Elderly folks get headaches, sure, but pair this with other signs and it's a clue. I've seen patients pop aspirin and wait it out. Dangerous move. If a headache feels alien and comes with neurological quirks, it's the brain saying, "Check me now." Don't guess. Get to a doctor. It might be the line between a scare and a stroke. 7. Brief loss of consciousness. Fainting mid-sentence or feeling so drowsy you can't keep your eyes open. It's not just a spell. When blood flow to the brain stalls, even for seconds, it shuts down briefly. I treated a 68-year-old woman who fainted chatting with her son. Her TIA led us to fix an irregular heartbeat, atrial fibrillation that was tossing clots. The brain demands a constant oxygen stream. A TIA's blockage can dim the lights, leaving you lightheaded or out cold. I've seen it blamed on low sugar or dehydration. Fair guesses, but if it's sudden and unexplained, it's suspect. One patient, a retired cop, shrugged off nodding off until a stroke hit days later. In my decades of practice, I've learned this. Brief losses of consciousness in the elderly aren't casual. If they slump or fade out, don't wait for round 2. Call for help. It's not fatigue, it's a warning shot from the brain. 8. Tingling sensations. Pins and needles creeping up one arm, leg, or face. It's like static on a radio, sudden and strange. It's not a pinched nerve if it hits out of nowhere and tags along with other symptoms. This is the brain's sensory wiring short-circuiting from a TIA's blood flow dip. I've seen it brushed off too often. A 71-year-old patient told me, "My hand tingled. I thought I slept on it." But her vision blurred too, and tests showed a TIA. When oxygen to the sensory cortex falters, you feel this prickly oddity, usually one-sided. Unlike carpal tunnel's slow burn, it's instant and fleeting. Here's my advice. Tingling alone might be benign, but with dizziness or speech issues, it's a chorus of alarm bells. I've had patients wait, only to regret it when paralysis followed. If your body buzzes unexpectedly, don't let it fool you. Get it checked. It's a whisper of trouble that could scream later. Here's the kicker. These signs are sneaky. They're brief, they mimic everyday aches, and the elderly often downplay them. In my practice, I've heard, "Oh, it's nothing," more times than I can count. But as a doctor, I know nothing can turn into everything. Society shrugs off aging quirks, but I've seen the data. 15% of over 65s will face a TIA. My advice? Trust your gut. If it feels off, it probably is. Risk factors and prevention. A proactive approach. Many strokes don't strike out of nowhere. High blood pressure, diabetes, atrial fibrillation. These are the usual suspects I've battled in patients. Smoking, obesity, a couch potato lifestyle, they pile on the risk. But here's what I tell families. You're not powerless. A heart-healthy diet, think Mediterranean vibes with olive oil and greens, can unclog arteries. A 20-minute walk daily, it's a game changer. Meds like aspirin or blood thinners, tailored by a doctor, can stop clots. I've seen patients turn their health around with these steps. Proof it's never too late. To the caregivers out there, you're the first line of defense. Watch for these signs. Don't let "I'm fine" fool you. Get them to checkups, cook a veggie-packed meal together, or join them for a stroll. I've seen families save lives by being proactive, not pushy, just present. It's about love, not lectures. Mini strokes aren't minor. They're the brain's 911 call. I've spent decades watching patients dodge disaster because they acted fast. Don't wait for a second chance. There might not be one. Know the signs, call for help, and fight for prevention. You've got the tools now. Use them. Key takeaways. Lesson 1. A TIA is a warning, not a fluke. 1 in 5 lead to a stroke in 90 days. Lesson 2. The 8 signs: weakness, vision issues, speech trouble, confusion, dizziness, headaches, fainting, tingling, demand action, not excuses. Lesson 3. Prevention works. Diet, exercise, and meds can rewrite your future. Lesson 4. Families, stay vigilant. You might spot what they miss.